A young child, a morbid scroll, death himself, and a whole lot of confusing symbolism. Let's break it down. Human Frailty was painted by the Italian artist Salvatore Rosa in 1656. To give you some context, the year before this painting's execution, Rosa's son, brother, and sister all died from a deadly plague that hit Naples, his hometown. This deeply personal tragedy is undoubtedly what gave birth to this painting's macabre subject matter and iconography. In the center, a woman, who has been interpreted as Rosa's mistress, Lucrezia, sits on a glass sphere and supports her and Rosa's dead son, Rosalvo, on her lap. The baby, guided by death, who is shown as a smirking winged skeleton, writes on a scroll the bleak phrase that introduces the theme of the painting. Conceptio culpa, nasci pena, labor vita, necesse mori. This phrase comes from a 12th century poem and translates to: conception is sin, birth is pain, living is toil, and dying is necessary. To drive the phrase home, Rosa has surrounded these figures with countless symbols of death and transience. In other words, memento moris. For example, the knife in the painting's foreground represents violence and death. Above it, two toddlers, or perhaps putti, play with bubbles and flames, symbols of brevity and transience. Next to them, butterflies symbolize the protagonist's ascending souls. The flowers that adorn Lucrezia's head represent evanescence, while the thistle plant in the painting's left foreground denotes decay and ruination. These roses could also be a reference to the artist's family name, Rosa, therefore confirming the identity of the seated figures, and the intensely personal tragedy this painting alludes to. In the background, a cracked obelisk symbolizes human frailty. It's decorated with ancient busts of a child and an older man, representing the passing of time. Below them, we see a fish, a symbol of decay and death, and a charging hippo that represents violence, force, and again, death. To the right, we see a sculpted bust of Terminus, a Roman god of death, adorned with a wreath of funerary cypress. And finally, in the bottom right corner, a sage owl stares intensely at us, imploring us to accept our own mortality.